Hi everybody, it's 10 a.m. here in Vancouver. Welcome to this webinar on the Master of Geomatics for Environmental Management from the Faculty of Forestry. Thanks so much for joining us and also letting us know where you're listening in from. It's great to see so many of you here. Before we begin, I do just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're broadcasting today from the traditional, ancestral and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. UBC Vancouver is located on the traditional lands of the Musqueam First Nation. And I know many of you will be doing your research at the moment into the Faculty of Forestry and also into UBC. But I'd really encourage you as well to read more about the Musqueam and the history of these lands where UBC Vancouver is located. And to get you started on that, if you haven't already, I'll post a couple of links into the chat later on the Musqueam, just so you can have a read. A great way to feel more connected to land and spaces, to be aware and to understand the history of the land. So I'd really encourage you to do that. Also, before we tell you more about the MGEM program, I just want to do a couple of housekeeping duties. First of all, you can ask us questions. So you can do that by using the Q&A. So I'm going to turn the chat off soon, and we'll use the chat to share useful links. But if you have any questions, please post them into the Q&A. And you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that somebody else has posted and you want to hear the answer to that one, make sure that you upvote it. And we're going to answer as many questions as we can today. We also had some great questions in from you when you registered for this event, so we'll be tackling some of those as well. And we'll do our best to get through as much info and give you as much guidance as possible. Before we talk more about the MGEM program itself, I do just want to tell you a little bit about UBC. Thanks so much for considering UBC for your graduate studies. UBC is considered one of the top universities in the world and is often ranked one of the top 20 public universities globally. A big reason for that is its research output. UBC is really a research powerhouse and is seen at the forefront of innovation, and particularly in certain areas in terms of industry and innovation and infrastructure, and also in terms of climate action. So, for example, UBC ranks #3 globally in the Times Higher ranking for its work on taking action on the climate. And the research that's produced here at UBC attracts a lot of funding. So in the last academic year, UBC received over 773 million Canadian dollars in funding from governments, nonprofit, from industry. And that was funneled into over 10,000 different projects across all of the faculties and programs at UBC. And the knowledge that's generated and the new knowledge that we create, much of that you'll learn on your program. So being a top research institution attracts the best faculty from around the world, attracts the best students. So you'll be joining a community that's really at the forefront of new knowledge in forestry and working with faculty members that are really at the top of their field as well. You'll be joining a really dynamic graduate school community at UBC as well. So UBC has over 11,000 grad students across its 12 different faculties, and around 7,500 of those are master's students. We have a good number of international students, so around 38% of our grad students are from outside of Canada. So it's a really diverse grad school community and very collaborative as well. So one of the things that we hear again and again from our grad students is the collaborative nature of our study and research. And you'll have opportunities to connect with grad students from a variety of different areas during your time at UBC. The Faculty of Forestry itself is ranked as one of the top 3 forestry schools in the world. We have a really world-class teaching team here some of the most innovative minds and approaches to the forestry profession. And we also have really amazing facilities. The picture here is of the forestry building at the UBC Vancouver campus. It's one of my favorite buildings on campus. It's definitely one of the coolest buildings on campus. And when you're in the building, you'll actually feel like you're in a forest with this atrium and the glass ceiling. It's a pretty amazing place to study and to learn. We also have two research forests, the Alex Fraser and the Malcolm Knapp research forests. And yeah, Faculty of Forestry is relatively small compared to many of our other faculties at UBC, but really close-knit community, really welcoming faculty, and a great place to study. So let me pass it over now to the MGEM team. I think, Paul, you're going to take things from here. Over to you.
Thank you, Shane. Hello, everybody, and good morning from Vancouver. My name is Dr. Paul Piquel. I'm an assistant professor of teaching here in the Faculty of Forestry and currently the acting director for the MGEM program. I'm going to give you a little overview of what our program is all about, and then I'll introduce a couple of alumni that we've invited here today to talk about their experiences as well. MGM is an intensive program that's finished in 9 months. And a lot of our graduates find that to be one of our strengths and an advantage because they want to come in and basically get a master's degree very quickly. So it is course-based, which does distinguish it from our thesis-based master's offerings at the university. So that's another reason why it's such a quick program. You're only engaged in coursework and also a capstone project where you're working with a community partner to basically solve some sort of environmental management problem and in the geomatics context. So those 9 months technically starts in July because here at UBC we have summer terms. So the program technically starts in summer term 2, which begins in July. But that's sort of when we're working out, laptops and equipment and all kinds of other stuff of getting you here to UBC. But we don't really expect you to be on campus in the classroom really until mid-August. So registration, all that stuff happens in that time. And then at the end of August, early September is when we usually hold our program orientation. So this is where we do our retreat to Loon Lake, which is sort of a resort of sorts that's hosted by the Faculty of Forestry at one of our research forests that Shane had just mentioned. Next slide, please. So what will you learn? Well, there's at every turn, we're trying to get technology into your hands. Geomatics is a very technology-based field. And of course, there is some theory on that, but at every turn, we're trying to put technology into your hands and extend that learning beyond the theory. That, as I mentioned earlier, does start with this week-long welcome retreat that we hold at the beginning of the first term. That allows everybody to sort of bond. We do some team building exercises and we do some field exercises when the weather's nice here in Vancouver. And overall, I mean, the whole program is really geared towards somebody who wants to be able to apply spatial data to real world challenges and environmental challenges. And we do this through a variety and a large diversity of topics and themes for labs. You'll do this as part of your capstone projects. Everybody does a different project. Most people work with community partners that range everywhere from government ministries here in Canada to non-governmental organizations and other private organizations around the world. So we have a large network of mentorships that we work with and community partners that we work with. So lots of opportunities to use and apply the learning in real world contexts for a real community partner. Yeah, thank you. And as part of that, for the coursework, we focus a lot on some key elements in our program, such as landscape ecology. So it's one of the first courses that you'll take, and this is sort of our introduction to just spatial thinking and modeling and applying landscape ecology principles to different environmental management themes that come through. And then beyond landscape ecology, there's at least four courses, I should say, of GIS and remote sensing between the two terms, where you'll learn about all kinds of different advanced GIS, geospatial analysis, image processing. We do have another course in spatial statistics that it basically should extend your current knowledge of statistics into the spatial domain and ultimately help you to apply that also to the project that you're working on. We also have a course that's dedicated to programming and geospatial analysis through programming with Python. So that is a standalone course, and we also teach programming in R as well. That's one of the other languages that we use quite a bit throughout the coursework. Throughout the program, there's a lot of different professional development opportunities, courses, and workshops that we specifically curate here in forestry for the MGEM program. But just by virtue of being a UBC graduate student, you also would have access in the 9 months that you're here to all kinds of other professional development opportunities that are available to our graduate students, which we always encourage our students to take advantage of. Next slide, please. So at the Malcolm Knapp Research Forest, where we do our retreat at the end of August, early September, we do a lot of our field exercises at that time. The drone demonstration is one that's really popular with students. It's one of the few places that you can fly a drone around Vancouver. So Malcolm Knapp Research Forest is just about an hour outside of Vancouver. And so we do this drone exercise. Getting technology into students' hands is something that we really try to do a lot of when the weather's good and when we have the opportunity to do it. There's other opportunities to, if you're interested in working with drones or drone imagery, being able to work with a community partner, who brings a project in that works with drone imagery is absolutely a possibility. We also have other speakers throughout the year who come in and talk about their work with drones and so forth. There's opportunities for example, for you also, if you were interested, to get your drone pilot license for Canada to certify you to fly drones in Canada if you wanted to. So there's lots of opportunities for those kinds of additional professional development and field-based skills to learn. Next slide, please, Shane. So if you're trying to figure out whether this program is right for you, you might consider where you want to end up in your career, and also maybe where you are in your career if you're currently employed. So a lot of our graduates, will go on to become analysts, technicians, managers, all kinds of different disciplines, forestry, ecology. So if you're already in any of those fields or disciplines, you might be considering this program to advance your technical skills. You want to retrain a little bit to learn how to apply these geospatial technologies to the environmental management problems for your current organization. But it's also a great thought exercise to think about, in your own career trajectory, where you want to end up and what kind of skill sets you might need to get there. So, for example, we have, computer scientists and engineers with people in those backgrounds coming into basically looking for a new way to apply their skills. And as I said, our recent graduates end up in a plethora of different disciplines. We're obviously here in the Faculty of Forestry, so many of our graduates go on to work in that sector, but others might come in and go on to geography or computer science, engineering, commerce, arts, all kinds of different degree programs. And honestly, as somebody who looks at admissions applications, the diversity of the background is really important for our student cohort, and we try to build cohorts every year that include people from a variety of different disciplines, because it really enriches the program learning experience. So as long as you have some sort of quantitative training or background and you're interested in expanding that quantitative training, this is the perfect program for you. Next slide, please, Shane. So yeah, as I mentioned, the career opportunities for somebody who's studying geomatics is quite wide-ranging. Geomatics itself is not necessarily a standalone discipline or field. you might go on to work in a variety of different sectors, as I mentioned earlier, a variety of different industries even. So, the need for our program is really centered around this growth in geospatial technology and understanding and advancements that's needed. And that's not even specific necessarily to Canada. So you could come into our program and, export your knowledge to anywhere that's in demand for these kinds of skills. We do know that the value of geospatial information is increasing and estimated somewhere between 150 to 270 billion dollars globally, which is huge, and that's even expected to grow by 35% over the next decade. The demand for geospatial information is also huge. I mean, many companies, large companies, Google, Amazon, are investing a ton of resources into analyzing and using geospatial information for, advancing products or addressing environmental management concerns. So there's a lot of demand out there for this kind of work. So I think that's all I have on the program. I'm very now pleased to introduce our two alumni speakers. The first of which is Claire Amour, and Claire is currently a PhD student here in the Faculty of Forestry. She was a graduate. You don't have that on you. Oh, you do. Yeah, 2020 of MGEM. And I was actually the mentor for Claire for her project as well. So yeah, I'll introduce Claire and let her speak a little bit about her experiences and her background and where MGEM has taken her. Take it away, Claire.
Can everyone hear me okay? Nods, yes. Okay, sweet. I'm using new headphones. Thank you for the introduction, Paul. So as he said, I graduated from MGEM in the third cohort. So 2020 was, as most of you know, not an amazing time to be in school in the spring. Sorry, my dog is whining in the background. So yeah, started MGEM 2019 and finished sort of March 12th was our last day of class. We did the last everything online, but I had a super great time in the program. Shush. Sorry, so I've been at UBC, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. I've been at UBC for quite a while. I got here in 2013, did my undergrad in chemical and biological engineering, and then I happened to be walking to the forestry building one day and I saw a poster for geomatics, and I said, well, that sounds kind of cool. And I looked into it and I said, oh, well, it's a brand new master's program and my grades aren't super great, so I probably would have an okay chance of getting in because I feel like no one has heard of this field before. And turns out I was sort of half right. I actually didn't get in originally and then was accepted sort of later as more space opened up in the program. But anyway, and I had never really done anything with geomatics before except for taking one class, my undergrad in forestry. And so I wasn't originally planning on pursuing a PhD when I started the program. I thought, like I have one degree already, I'll do this professional degree, get out in a year, and then go on to pursue a job sort of in my field. But then after meeting a lot of the PhD students and grad students in forestry, many of whom were my TAs, I decided that actually pursuing more graduate school was a lot more interest to me, because I think in my mind, if I thought I was doing a graduate degree, it would have been in engineering. And I was like, there's absolutely no way I want to do a grad degree in engineering. But then discovering something I was a lot more passionate about really helped me recognize, I guess, that potential. So I started as a PhD student with the Integrated Remote Sensing Studio in 2020, which is led by the illustrious Dr. Nicholas Coops, who's also the director, I believe, of the MGEM program still. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, and I use, tons of the skills that I learned in MGEM, specifically a lot of the coding skills that I used. And I work with integrating LiDAR-derived structure. So LiDAR is a technology that some of you may be familiar with that we use. Its light bounces off of trees and it tells us what the trees look like in shape. And I use that to integrate it with predictive ecosystem mapping. That is a product that is created by the Ministry of Forests. So kind of putting those two, I have an ecological data set that's really small scale, and then I have this like structural data set, and I try to mash the two together sort of and see what can come out of it. I was also a TA for a couple MGEM courses. I was TA for GEM 511, which is in the second term. I did it for 2 terms with Paul. And then I was also a technical mentor for the project course in MGEM. I did that for, it's a year-long course. I did it for the first year, and then in the second term of the last year, I decided it was too much of a commitment, so I dropped out of it. But it was really amazing to go through this program and then go on to TA a lot of the students having the experience that I did, and get to see the program grow over time. And then I also have been a TA for an undergrad course in forestry, recreation, tourism planning. If anyone has taken that, I've TA'd for the last 3 terms, so you've probably had me as a TA if you have, but if not, great course and I recommend taking it. So I think my contact info should be available somewhere if anyone would like to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about the MGEM program itself or my experience afterwards and sort of navigating a PhD, because I feel like I saw a few questions about people wanting to do grad school following a professional master's versus a research master's, or talking about if MGEM is sort of the right program for you given that experience. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. The other alumni who I'm going to introduce is Ramon Meltzer, excuse me. And Ramon was a grad from a couple of years ago, and is also now a PhD student in the same lab as Claire is. So yeah, with that, Ramon, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in MGEM and how it's gotten you to where you are now?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks, Paul, for the introduction. So very much like Claire, I am a UBC student through and through. Did my undergrad here in the geography department in environment and sustainability, which is where I first kind of got my hands dirty with some GIS and some remote sensing. I wasn't too sure after my undergrad what I wanted to do, so I took a year off to kind of think about my options. I looked into some research programs. I looked into some programs at BCIT and some other local institutions. And I also came across the MGEM program, which I applied to and completed in 2021. I was in the COVID cohort, so we were fully online for the entire duration of the program, which is definitely a little bit out of the norm, but was a very interesting experience nonetheless. And I would say that some of the main things that I was able to take out of the program really was kind of the technical skills that I didn't have coming into the program to kind of support kind of the environmental thinking and my environmental interests that I got out of my undergrad. So after completing MGEM, I was approached by Nicholas Coops, who, as Claire mentioned, is the director of the program and also the kind of the PI of the Integrated Remote Sensing Studio, which is a research lab here at Forestry, to work on a project that he proposed to the Canadian Space Agency. I wasn't too sure if a PhD was for me or not, so I kind of made a deal with him where I would come into the lab and work away on this project as a research scientist, and then we could kind of reassess whether I would turn this into a PhD or not later on, which we ended up doing. So my research, as I mentioned, is funded by the Canadian Space Agency and kind of focuses on remote sensing data products and modeling approaches that make estimates of carbon sequestration across the Canadian boreal. So very kind of broad scale modeling approaches. So if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to shoot me a message, send me an email. Always love talking about my research. If you join the MGEM program, you will probably see me around as one of your TAs. So in the past, I've TA'd the project management course in MGEM, I've TA'd the entrepreneurship course in MGEM. I think it got cut from the screen here, but I'm also currently the senior TA for the capstone project course in MGEM, which is across 2 terms where you really get to kind of dive into kind of the real world along with a community partner, which can usually be anyone from the ministry or an NGO. It can also be a professor at UBC, even in the faculty of forestry. And you really get to kind of put all the skills that you're developing to the test. So that's my spiel. Thanks everyone for coming, and feel free to message me if you have questions.
Thank you, Ramon. I think Shane or Lee is going to talk about the general admissions requirements. Yeah, Lee, thank you. Go ahead, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. And yeah, thank you to Claire and Ramon for, if you guys want, maybe, I wonder if you guys can put your emails in the chat in case anyone wants to reach out if they have further questions. And I'm the admissions coordinator for our professional master's programs. And so I have 2 slides to go over. As Paul mentioned, we have a wide range of academic background for students who've applied to this program. And we do require a 4-year bachelor's degree. So there was a question, I think, in the Q&A about a diploma program. Unfortunately, it's a competitive program. And so we are looking for, it's a graduate degree. So we are looking for a 4-year bachelor's degree with a minimum average of a B+ range in your senior level courses. So if it's in the States, it's usually B+ a 3.3. And if it's in UBC or a Canadian institutions, about 76% minimum. And if you're applying from an international country, each country has their own minimum requirements that Faculty of Grad Studies at UBC sets out, and it's equivalent to almost a B+ range. I will put the link in the chat so you can see from based on your country where you're applying from, what the minimum requirement is. And some of the students will also require to pass an English language proficiency test if English wasn't the official language of instruction at your university. Our admissions webpage does list all the English tests that we accept, and also a list of minimum scores that are required for each of these tests as well. And the deadline to apply is March 15th, 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So I would encourage you to apply early, give your referees some time to submit their letters. If we could get to the next slide, please. Thanks. So the entire application consists of the online application and the application fee. You can get to that link on our How to Apply page. And you also need to upload scanned copies of official transcripts for all the post-secondary institutions you have attended, as well as provide 3 letters of references, and one of them should be an academic referee who can attest to your academic abilities. And when you list your referees, just a quick tip is not to use their personal emails like Yahoo or Gmail account, because they will not be able to upload their reference letters if you use those email addresses. So please remember to use their institutional email addresses. And also, if you need to do the English proficiency test, to have the agency, the test agency, send the score directly to UBC. There are instructions on how to do that, and I'll put the link in there as well. Instead of you uploading this test score, because it's not official if the student uploads the English test score on the application portal. And also to submit your MGEM questionnaire, a letter of intent or motivation to tell us why you're interested in this program. And it's about a 1-page and a 1-page CV as well for your application. And next step, oh, there's a picture of us right there. So next step is just to, if you have any further questions, make an appointment with us. And I'm happy to Zoom with you, and also subscribe to our mailing list, and you can hear more about upcoming updates from our program. And I'll just put the links in the chat here, in the chat for the minimum requirements. And I'll pass it on to Shane.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks everyone for that great presentation. What we'll do now is we'll step into the Q&A portion of the session. So I'll just stop sharing the slides here so you can see everybody. And we'll begin. Let's dive into the questions that came into the Q&A, and then we can also answer some of the questions that you sent in when you registered. But just to begin with, from Nicole here, I think we covered this a little bit, Paul, in terms of the type of graduate program, and I guess when you're assessing applications, what kind of academic experience do you look out for? I know people come from various different programs, but what's the common thread, and what are you looking for when you review someone's application?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So besides meeting the general admissions requirements that Lee had just outlined, something that usually makes students stand out is either prior work experience, that they're either currently working or they have some work experience, not necessarily in GIS or geomatics or remote sensing, but in an adjacent field. Because as I mentioned earlier, bringing students into the cohort who have a diverse set of experiences, not just backgrounds, academic backgrounds, but also experiences, is something that we really look for. So applicants many applicants are outstanding, and so you have to think, I guess, in terms of when you're applying, what's really going to set you apart. Is it some experience that you've had? Is it some odd way that you think that you're going to apply the skill sets that you're going to learn in your discipline? I mean, we've had people come in from all kinds of different backgrounds, like veterinarians, for example, and come into the program. So, I mean, there's really not a limit, really, I think, to how you might apply your skills in the program. But that's something that we look for, is like how you're actually going to apply, and also what is the value that you think that you bring into the program for your fellow cohort.
That's great. And we did have, just on this topic, we did have a question in the chat from Jackson, who's actually doing a forestry undergrad at the moment at the University of Lethbridge. They don't have computer programming in their background. I guess, how essential is that? And are there any prereqs that they could do during their undergrad that might strengthen their application?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, we don't have a prerequisite for programming. Although if you have,
No, we don't.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have a background, or if you have some, that gives you an edge up. But we don't assume that of anybody coming into the program. So, and I think Ramon had answered this somewhat in his experience. But we start from the ground up. So everybody starts, with the same base. And so if you're ahead of that, then it might be review. If you have no programming experience, then you're in the right place. Ramon or Claire, can you speak to whether you had programming experience or coming into the program, and what that was like?
I can speak to that a little bit. So I took, so my degree in engineering, I did very little programming because it was a chemical engineering. So I learned like a C++ class and one time in my first year, and that was pretty much it. So I was starting more or less from scratch. I think since I have been in the program, or maybe even since Ramon has been in the program, which would have been 2-3 years ago now, that they teach more coding. They integrated a lot more into sort of all the different courses, because it is primarily what people use in industry, or maybe not primarily, but a lot of what is used in industry, and especially in grad school. Like I use R for pretty much everything, or Python more so than I would use sort of built-in programs like ArcGIS Pro, for example, or QGIS. And so I think that they're teaching it a lot more from the beginning. So it might seem a bit more heavy-handed in that sense, but it doesn't assume any knowledge of the program. Like it starts you right at the beginning. And people, in my experience, have had varying, people have various coding experience coming into MGEM. So there's always kind of people to help you that might, not necessarily, they might not be as beginner, and so they're not really paying attention to that much stuff, and they might have more time to help you because they're not learning it from scratch. And so, yeah, I definitely wouldn't be intimidated by not having a coding experience. That said, though, if you do have time or inclination to learn a little bit in your spare time before you begin the program, or as you're applying or as part of your application, that's not a bad thing. If you have time, you might as well do it, but it's certainly not necessary, is what I would say.
Thanks, Claire.
That's great. And a couple of other quick questions. Nicholas asks, is it possible to join the program without an undergraduate degree? Like if you had a relevant diploma or experience, or do you really need to have that degree first?
At this time, like I said, the program is quite competitive, so we are looking at, we would need a bachelor's degree. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Guinevere asked, are there any community industry partners who work in coastal management that might support the capstone project?
Not that I can think of. I mean, we do work with we do work with ministries. For example, the Ministry of Forest is one ministry that we work with quite a bit. We have a lot of mentors from. We also have mentors from Parks Canada as well, so sort of provincial, national level there. But I can't think of any that that come to us from coastal management or fisheries or oceans or stuff like that. But that said, I mean, if there was interest in doing a project around that, there could be mentors to approach either on campus or other scientists in those areas who might be willing to sort of sponsor you as a student in the program or sponsor your capstone project. But to date, I don't think we've had any in coastal management.
Blair, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that 2 MGEM program graduates from my year, Cody and Irene, if you remember them, Paul, work for the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So neither of them did coastal related projects for their capstone. They both did LiDAR related and forestry things, but they did go on to work in sort of coastal management. And I'm sure that if someone was interested in that specifically in Canada, that it would be straightforward to set up like a meeting with them and they might be very interested in mentoring. So there's always a sort of opportunities, many different opportunities for different projects. Obviously all at Paul's discretion because he leads the course, but if there's something that I feel like if there's something in particular that you're interested in, it's usually like someone out there will be willing to mentor you and you can work it into your degree.
That's great to hear. Got a question from Michael. I think Ramon is typing an answer here, so thanks Ramon, and feel free to jump in on this. But Michael's been away from school for nearly 2 decades. He did take stats, during his degree, but it's been a while since he's used the full suite of statistics skills. Would you recommending a refresher course prior to starting the program?
Maybe I can jump in on this one. I was already typing away. Yeah, I think if you've been away from academia for a little while, you definitely won't be the only one. Every cohort always has a number of students who have been kind of out in industry working on their careers for several years. I know in my cohort we had the person Paul mentioned, a veterinarian who was in late career even. So definitely don't be too worried about it. And I think in my experience, I think every year in the summer before courses kind of kick off, kind of refresher materials, particularly for stats, are circulated to kind of catch people up and refresh them a little bit, because I do think that's typically one of the things that people may have completed in their first year of undergrad or their second year and haven't really actively looked at it in a little while. So if you have an opportunity to do some refresher material even on your own time, online, go for it, but definitely don't let it dissuade you from entering the program.
Excellent, great advice. Thanks, Ramon. I was wondering as well. I know that you and Claire both mentioned your role as TAs in the program. And just to explain for those who don't know, a TA is a teaching assistant. So typically, a PhD student who'd be in the classroom and teaching and working with the students. I'm just wondering, Ramon, and Claire as well, could you talk a little bit about that role and how do you work with students, how do you support them in the program?
Yeah, I think in MGEM particularly, there is a bit of a support network that you get, because typically the teaching assistants that you have in most of your courses have either been involved in some way in helping update the courses or write the labs, and more often than not, your TAs in MGEM have at some point actually completed MGEM. So like Claire, for example, was one of my TAs and helped me in GEM 510, which is the GIS course. So typically your TAs are very well aware of the content, but also just more the general kind of ins and outs of the program, the stress that comes along with it, the ups and the downs. So I would say in MGEM, more than most programs, you have kind of this unique support network in your TAs. Do you have anything to add to that, Claire?
Yeah, that was a pretty good summary. I think I would definitely agree with Ramon that I think it's pretty nice in MGEM because there's 7 of us now that are more than that. Around 7 of us now that are grad students that were MGEM students. And I think we just had our first 2 MGEM students just turn into postdocs. So they don't TA anymore, but they actually instruct some of the classes now, which is kind of cool. so they've been TAing sort of, they did the course and then they TA'd all of it and now they're the professor. So it's like from the very beginning. And yeah, I would say that it's really nice having a TA who actually understands what it is, not just who's taking the course, but who understands sort of the full course load. And also I think for me, depending on the class, I mean, this is interesting to know if you plan on becoming a TA, but the role of the TA is super variable in the class. Like sometimes you'll never talk to them. They'll just mark your assignments and sort of hand them back to you and they'll just be a mysterious face. Other times, like they're basically running the class. And so in a lot of times, the TA, rather than the professor, sort of is your go-to person with questions and with support. And they're often like really great mentors for the class. So they are really, really, in MGEM, I found that the TAs were highly, highly valuable and really, really great resources, both during sort of and after my experience in MGEM. And I also would credit them with, you know, like I kind of said in my introduction, like it was meeting TAs and sort of getting to chat to them that and sort of inspired me to do a PhD, because I was like, if they can do it, you know, so can I. So yeah, anyway, that's all I would add.
I could also add, in addition to what Ramon and Claire have highlighted there, is that both Ramon and Claire also mentioned that they were TAs in the capstone course as well. So something that's kind of unique, I think, about our mentoring program with our community partners is that in addition to being mentored by a leading professional, somebody who's working in industry or with government on a project, you're also mentored by what we call technical mentors, which are folks like Ramon and Claire, who are really teaching assistants who are matched with your program, your project, your capstone project, so that they can sort of help you work along the different ins and outs of the project, and you're not sort of left figuring it out on your own. So you really have a dedicated person to work with and work generally, I find, work quite closely with over the 2 terms that you're in the program.
That's really great to hear. Really great to hear about the community there and how there's a great network of support. And just thinking about the workload piece, another question from Michael. Just they're interested in understanding, you know, the typical on-campus schedule, the time commitment. You know, what does that look like an average day, an average week for an MGEM student?
This would be a great question for either of our former alumni. Ramon or Claire, do you want to take a stab at that?
I mean, so I'm not sure because I know that the program, so as I said, I did it before COVID. So 2019, then it sort of finished during COVID. And I know the first year that I TA'd 511, for example, it was almost all online, I believe. And then the second year it was partially online and then sort of hybrid in person. And so taking that into account, or the sort of, so when I did it in person, it was quite intensive. I was on campus pretty much every day. You know, most of our classes, I feel like, were concentrated in the morning. So usually it would sort of start around 9 a.m. And then sort of in the afternoons would be when I was working on my homework. And then some nights I might be there, you know, past dinner time. But mostly I would say I was probably on campus like around 40 hours a week, maybe 30 to 40 hours a week, sort of just depends too on whether, you know, I didn't have like a monitor at home. So it's kind of nice having the big screen to go and work. And certainly like it was faster to get assignments done when I was in MGEM classroom because there's other people working on the same things rather than sort of toiling in obscurity in your own home. And so that was my experience, but that was when everything was full-time in person. There was not an online component. So I would say that like for a lot of people, you know, if you're not living super close to UBC, and I lived sort of close at the time, but now I live about an hour away, that like that definitely would factor the need to be on campus and be there in person, and also to commute to campus would sort of factor into my answer to that. But I would say, sorry, I'm just looking for the wording of the actual question so I can specifically answer it. Anyway, but I would say, yeah, like I think Ramon and I kind of answered this as well about someone asked if you would be able to work full time, and I would say the answer to that would be like definitely no, because not only would it be taking a lot of time away from, well, it would just be very conflicting for your schedule, but I think that this program is very valuable because it's only 9 months. You don't have to take 2 years off of work. It's not cheap, you know, it's like whatever, $18,000 for domestic and maybe $30,000 for international students. So it's like paying a lot of money to do this, and you might as well put all your time and energy into it just for that period of time, and then not, hopefully, like not have to worry about working. Obviously, oopsies. Obviously, if you need to work, you need to work. But I would think that, I would hope that you would be, I would recommend, if you can't do the program without working at least part-time or full-time, then maybe it would be a good idea to wait, or do it in a place in your life where you're maybe where you're financially able to take that time off or get support in another way, because that sounds like it would just be very stressful. I hope that answered the question. I know it's kind of circular, but.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Claire. And I can also mention that, I mean, with the capstone project, that course in particular, we don't meet every week, and a lot of the time that you're working on your capstone is sort of on your own time with some structured time in class. But now, since COVID, we've really moved towards a remote mentoring model, so that the community partners that we work with are from around the world. And I mean, time zones are now an issue, but most students are connecting with those folks via Zoom and having meetings and stuff like that remotely. So that's the only, I guess, caveat I can think of around being in person or time commitments versus being in person or online.
Great. Thanks everyone for that. Next question here from Julia. I'm completing my undergrad in geography from UVic, and I've concentrated mainly on geomatics classes for my upper level classes, advanced GIS, advanced remote sensing, etc. Would this still be a valuable program for me? I don't have much program experience with R or Python, so I'm thinking that would be really valuable to learn, but I'm just curious to know. What about thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a background or if you've taken some courses, that's always great. You're probably going to continue to learn more. I guess whether or not it's going to be, valuable for you it really comes down to what career trajectory you want. We definitely prepare you to work as, an advanced GIS analyst or technician, and a variety of other disciplines as well. So if that's where you want to end up, then I think that having a little bit of background in statistics or remote sensing or GIS isn't gonna hurt you. It might make it a little easier to get through maybe the first term or so, but we do go on to more advanced stuff as well. And maybe Claire has some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, that was Paul mostly covered it, but I would say I've talked to maybe upwards of 10 prospective students for MGEM, just for MGEM and also grad school. And I think that's a question that people get, or at least you guys must get a lot, is that, or that I've received a lot, is like, okay, well, I have some GIS experience, is this program worth it? And I think it's important to look at to answer that question, you have to look at what sort of career you're looking for afterwards. So for me, I knew absolutely nothing about, I had no degree anywhere close to geomatics. So it was like, the appeal of MGEM was like, okay, I can get a master's in this subject. It's made for beginners. So I don't, I'm okay where I am to start it now. And then I graduate and I have this, it's 1 year and it's sort of done. So it's a sort of in and out. Yet here I am still in school. But thinking about what job you want to do afterwards, if the job requirements of that are fulfilled by what you already have and the growth that you have of that job into the future are fulfilled by those requirements, then maybe from a practical point of view, it doesn't really make sense for you to do MGEM. But if you're saying I do have this skill set that may have some overlap, but then the additional skills that I'm learning are what's going to take me further in this career that I want to have, then I think it would make a lot of sense for you to do it. But I would look at it sort of in the scope of your what you want to do, because these days remote sensing and GIS are such upcoming fields that you'd actually be surprised that they often don't require much more than a bachelor's or diploma if you look at a lot of jobs. So even if you just go up on Indeed and look up GIS specialists and just look at the different job requirements and see if they're filled by what you already have, and then use that to sort of inform your decision.
Great. Yeah, I hope that one was helpful, Julia. Just one more question in the Q&A here that we should answer. It's from Laura, who has a degree in urban management and development. They're saying they don't have experience, but I think from what we've heard today, they could certainly still apply to this program from what I've heard.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we do have Muffle, another course-based master's program, Master of Urban Forestry Leadership here in forestry, for which I also teach the geomatics of that program as well. So we have lab assignments, for example, that try to cater towards urban contexts as well. So it's I think that's true of my courses. I teach the GIS courses in MGEM. I think it's also true for Nicholas's courses, the remote sensing courses. There's some urban context and focus at some points there as well. So yeah, if you have that background, you certainly won't be lost in the top topics and themes of the program for sure.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. So now we get to see Claire's talk as well. This is awesome. I get a cameo experience, a cameo appearance, rather. Awesome. So we did have another quick question there that Lee answered super quick. Everything is in person now, so nothing's online anymore. We did actually have a couple of questions from people on the registration form asking if there are any plans in the future to teach this program online. Are there any plans for that, or will it stay in person, do you think?
Well, currently we are exploring the possibility of an online option that might even be catered to a part-time option as well. But we're not anywhere near being able to do that in the near term. Certainly not this coming cohort, probably not even the next one after that. But yeah, it will be 100% in person. Intensive on campus. So there's a lot of value. I think that's one of the strengths of our program as well as the cohort. Not only do you get to interface with your cohort around you, but even like where Claire's at, you get to sit in a room with folks who you're constantly interacting with. You also get opportunities to interface with, as Shane had mentioned, all of the other course-based master's programs and students in those programs as well. So there's a lot of the benefits to doing it in person, but we are exploring the possibility of an online option.
So that's great. And how many people are in the program typically? Like, what are the size of each cohort for MGEM?
We generally aim for 35 is I think the max capacity of our classroom with machines and laptops and screens and that such. But generally we have anywhere between around 30 students generally. It's kind of fluctuated up and down around that number, but that's kind of sort of the average I think over the last 5 years. That's
great. So it's a really nice size, not a big program for sure. So I think that's going to be really great. Okay, so a couple of questions that we got in on registration just about career outcomes. Like I know we've touched on that today, but could you just remind us of some of the careers people go on to after the program?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of students go on to take on titles like geomatics analysts or remote sensing analysts or technician. Those are pretty common titles. Claire and Ramon here are good examples of a few students who go on to do a more academic route. So some folks do see it as a stepping stone to get into a PhD program. For example, if you don't want to go through a 2-year research intensive master's degree and you just want to get a 9-month MGEM degree, that can be a stepping stone into that realm if you're interested. Beyond that, I mean, other folks, could be managers, could be working in various ministries, non-governmental organizations, as I mentioned before. A lot of our students, because of our community partnering that we do, go on to work with their community partners. That's a great way to sort of network with folks in government or in other organizations. So there's a wide breadth of not just titles, but also possible disciplines and industries that you could work in, not even just within British Columbia or Canada. I mean, these are skills that are transferable really to industries around the world. So there's a lot of different titles that I'm sure I'm missing in terms of what you could become after completing the MGEM program.
Yeah, there's a lot of great examples there. And one thing that that's coming up for me that I'm thinking about is that you have this small cohort of around 30 people, and that's a really great network for you as you all kind of step out into industry and different things. Has that been something that you've noticed, Ramon or Claire, in terms of the network from the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, in a cohort have this great advantage of creating these bonds with people that kind of extend beyond the program. One of my best friends is sitting down over there who was in the program, and we're both in academia still, but you know, when people kind of move into different sectors, you do kind of have that networking opportunity within the cohort. And also something to do in MGEMs, there's a career conversations every year where they bring in people from industry, and you get to have kind of like a job fair almost, where you get to talk to people about what they're looking for at their respective companies, you know, like Esri and some local consulting firms, etc. So kind of the networking opportunity in MGEM is definitely an asset.
I can add one thing to that yeah, I think that there are lots of opportunities in network. I do think that it's definitely a give what you get situation. So if you're making the effort to go in there and actually talk to people and like get their contact information and sort of follow up, I think that will take you very far. But sometimes, like, if you don't want to do that, and I personally hate cold talking to strangers, so it's not very appealing to me. But like, basically the reason that I got into MGEM and was interested in it and was able to succeed in the program is because, and got into my PhD really, is because I approached people and sort of somehow fooled Nicholas into letting me into his lab, sort of thing. And so there was also like, as Lee can certainly attest to, there are so many different things going on in forestry, and we get these emails that have so many interesting events. If you actually put in the time and effort to read them and then go to some of the events, I know it can feel often overwhelming with everything else that's going on. You're like, man, the last thing I want to do is go sit in like a Zoom seminar. But they are super, super valuable, and you kind of never know what conversations you might have. And even if it's just that someone like recognizes your face or your name and you reach out to them and you go, oh, hey, you went to this thing too. Like, can I talk to you about this? That people are much more sort of willing to respond to those emails. And so I would say, if you are going to join the program, then take the opportunity to actually go sort of above and beyond by attending those events, because there are lots of really, really interesting things going on that might not necessarily be a part of the core part of the program.
I just want to add as well that we have, like, Kathleen's on this call. Kathleen's actually our program coordinator, but she's not a panelist, but she actually does invite guest speakers from industry as well to give talks to our MGEM cohort. And I believe they do get a number of industry professional development workshops as well. And as Ramon mentioned, we have a career networking session that we just hosted. And every year it's so nice to see some of our alumni attend as one of the industry partners because they've been hired by Ecora or the Department of Fisheries and Ocean. Like, so our grads are working in different various sectors like NGOs, government ministry, and private consultants. So it's really nice to see them come back and talk about their industry experience as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add quickly to that. This year we just now had our first former alumni. MGEM alumni now is a mentor as a community partner for our students. So we've really established a period of time in the program where, you know, our students are coming back, and as Claire mentioned, going on to other roles and now serving as mentors. And I think if you're considering a degree anywhere, you really have to appreciate the networking opportunities that you're given when you go into that degree program, because you're paying tuition dollars, to come to the university, and in this case, being an in-person program, there's tons of almost nonstop opportunities to network and connect with folks. And if at the end of the program all you have is a degree parchment with a degree name printed on it, and no networking, then you've probably not made the best use of that time. So that's a really valuable resource, I think, when you're considering, whatever kind of degree program that you're wanting to complete.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's really, really great advice. There's so much more that you can get from the program and from grad school that's happening outside of the classroom, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question here from Kirash, and Lee, I think you're typing an answer there. It might be one that needs to, do you want to speak the answer?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
So I was going to say that in the meantime, your referees are more than welcome to send me their reference letters by email, and I will hold it for the committee to use as an evaluation. However, I know when it's time to make the official admission, we do require the original letters that are signed and put on letterhead by your referee. And those ones can be sent to us by post. In the past, some students have sent it by courier. or registered mail, just to make sure that it does arrive. But I would say have them email us first a letter so that we have it for your application.
Thanks, Lee. That's great. Excellent. So we're at 10:59 now. We better sort of wrap things up. Paul, do you have any final thoughts, any things to wrap things up?
I guess I would say if you're really considering our program against other programs, think about the fields that you want to be in. I think MGEM really opens up the possibilities, as Claire and Ramon have already mentioned, to being able to do all kinds of different stuff. And our alumni have gone on to go into all kinds of different industries and workplaces. So don't let your diverse background, if you don't have a background in geography or forestry, we don't necessarily care. As long as you meet the admissions requirements and demonstrate how, what value you bring into our cohort. So don't feel put off by those, because you'll be in good company.
Great. Well, I just want to say a really big thank you to all of our panelists. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for answering so many questions. It was really helpful, really insightful. Thanks, everyone. And we'll be following up with you soon with the recording of today's session and some useful links and next steps. So do be in touch. But thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And we'll hopefully see you at UBC Vancouver soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.